My name is Lisa. I want to share the story of my friend. Her name is Mavis. This girl worked with me a month ago at a local diner before this story happened to her. This girl means something to me, and I still keep in touch with her. To make the whole picture clearer to you, I will continue the story on her behalf. That day I returned from work 2 hours later than usual, around 8:30 p.m. I rented an apartment on the first floor, so for safety, I recently installed protective bars on the windows. But sometimes I left the window ajar to ventilate the room. Therefore, after work, I immediately noticed that the window was almost completely open, although I left it closed. It immediately caught my eye, but then I thought that maybe it was the wind, and went into the shower. After the shower, I immediately closed the window, ordered some food, ate, and went to bed. My bed is opposite the window, and I usually do not cover this window with curtains because I love to fall asleep looking at the stars and the moon. I went to bed, of course, later than usual, around 1 a.m. So I was lying in the bed and cannot sleep. The room became cold. I turned over and lay on my side facing the window. I raised my head, opened my eyes, and saw something standing outside my window. My whole body froze out of fear, and for a while I felt my heart stop. But I didn't scream. I just wasn't even capable of that. It was like sleep paralysis, but only in reality. This something had the figure of a man. It just stood there and looked in my direction. The moonlight only showed me his silhouette. The room was dark. I slowly covered myself with the blanket and began to watch him closely. He didn't move. I thought about my phone, but it turned out to be too far from me. I left it in the kitchen, a chance for salvation, which I left in another room. I had no choice. I could only lie in the bed and look at this creepy silhouette of a man outside the window. So he stood there for 10-20 minutes, since I noticed him. God, has he been standing here for a long time? I didn't take my eyes off him and still wanted to close my eyes and open them again, hoping that he would turn out to be some kind of glitch in the matrix. After 10 minutes of inaction, he raised his hand. I thought that he raised his fist, but suddenly, something long began to appear in his hand. This thing got longer and longer. It was quite long and thick. It seemed like it was a stick or something like that. Afterward, he slowly pulled this stick towards the window, and then I remembered that I had not locked the window. At that moment, I was simply in despair. The only barrier against him was not locked. But even though I thought there was a grate, it didn't make it any easier. He pushed the window door with this stick, and it slowly opened with a creak. Out of anger, I wanted to get up, push this stick back to him, close the door, turn on the lights everywhere, and call the police. But I couldn't. As it turned out, I was too cowardly for that. All hope lay in the locked door and bars on the window. He almost opened the window and slowly removed that stick. Then he stood for a minute and took something out of his pocket. I looked at it from all sides. Then I began to hear a creak. Again, the creak. I was terrified. I even wanted to call for help, but I couldn't. This asshole was sawing my grill. It felt like torture, as if they were about to catch me and do the most terrible things. This freak continued to saw for another 5 to 6 minutes. But then he stopped, put the instrument back, and began to simply look at me without moving. Although I didn't see his face, I knew that he was looking at me. I felt it with my whole body. He looked and looked. Then he raised his hand, stood in this position for another 2 to 3 minutes, and began knocking on the glass. 1, 2, 3, and again 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. This knock was dull and so creepy, as if it was not a knock at all, but someone's terrible voice. I silently cursed this freak and muttered at the same time. So, what's next? He froze again, and now stuck his face to the window. There was a dull thud. I wondered if he was trying to break the glass with his head. No, he tried to squeeze his head through the bars. It seems like he did not succeed. He returned to the pose of a standing dead man. After a while, he raised his hand again and started waving at me. He waved to me twice and began to move away from the window. And he did it very slowly. Very, very slowly. After about 5 minutes, he was no longer visible, and I kept looking at him and expecting something even worse. As if she had already grabbed ankles. An hour passed, 2 or 3, and I was still completely frozen. Even under the blanket, I felt cold. Of course, with the window open. So, I lay there until the morning. Without moving, I did not make a single sound, and finally waited for the morning. As soon as the sun completely illuminated the room, I dared to get up, go to the window, close it, and take the phone. I called the police, told them everything in detail, and immediately packed my things and went to my parents. 2 weeks later, an officer came to me and said that they checked all the cameras from neighboring buildings, which also filmed my window, and that nothing was found there that I told them. At that moment, I just burst into tears. I threw a tantrum that I'm not lying, I'm not crazy, check it again. My parents calmed me down, I cried, and I went to the bathroom to wash myself. Then I calmed down, and the officer was already sitting in the kitchen talking to my dad. He had a laptop. He motioned with his hand for me to come over. I came. He turned on the recording. My window was visible there from the neighboring store on the second floor. At 3:08 a.m., my window slowly opened. My window opened inwards, and it was no longer visible who opened the window. The camera could not see what was happening inside the room, but it was clear that there was no one outside, on the street. No one. No one, Lisa. Can you imagine? Nonsense. After this incident, Mavis still lives with her parents. She doesn't want to be alone anymore, even at work. As you understand, she left our city and her job. After all, we often had to work alone on the night shift. Now she takes some pills, probably some antidepressants. She works in a bakery with her sister, and I hope she regains consciousness. The police did not continue anything. They advised her to take some rest and take a break from work. And now I can't sleep peacefully after what I saw yesterday. As you already understood, after that incident, Mavis did not return to that apartment at all. And I still work in the same city and the same eatery. I visited Mavis 3 days ago. Then I decided, purely out of my curiosity, to look into that house. I crossed the road and wanted to go into the apartment, but I remembered that it was rented by other residents. I went to the window, and I saw that there was a mark on the grate. It was as if it has been sawed, and they tried very hard. It seemed like just a little more effort was needed, and the iron could give in. I felt wild horror and quickly ran away from there. Of course, I wouldn't tell Mavis anything, and now I'm going to move out of this city. Now it's for sure.